the Everything But Politics podcast.
Let's go. Everything But Politics, episode 152. Joining us, Evan Winiker. Evan, welcome to the show, brother. It's great to meet you. Thanks for taking the time.
Dude, thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah, it's absolutely our pleasure. So, Evan, I would love to begin if you could give us and our listeners a quick rundown of your background and what you now do on a day-to-day basis.
I would love to. So right now, I am one of the founding and managing partners of Range Music, which is part of Range Media. We started the company about 5 years ago, and we represent a lot of very cool artists, as well as actors, athletes, and a bunch of really cool brands. Before that, I was a musician, and I played in bands for a very long time, which I love doing, but that was a different part of my life. And now for fun, I love painting, golfing, cooking, traveling, spending time with my girlfriend and my dog and our cat, and just being a happy person.
It's awesome. So I'm happy you mentioned golf because we're going to get into golf. We are big golfers. And I saw your swing on your Instagram. You're not bad, Evan.
Thank
You got yourself a little golf swing there.
Thank you.
But let's go back to your upbringing in New Jersey.
Mhm.
Musical influence from the get-go? Are your parents musicians? What was that like growing up in northern Jersey in that environment?
Great question. I was blessed to be surrounded by friends who were into music really young. And when we were like 10, 11, 12, we were kind of forming bands. And, a couple of those guys, Jack Antonoff and Daniel Silbert, I ended up playing in bands with for over a decade and a half. And that's where we started. We were in middle school, and, the bands we would listen to were kind of bands in the punk scene, which was this burgeoning underground DIY, really cool, special thing at the time. And all these shows would be held at VFW halls and firehouses and little places like that. And it was really, really interesting. Like, it was ambitious teenagers renting out these places and basically being promoters, and then other ambitious teenagers who wanted to be in bands playing shows for their friends and making fans. And it was so special and unique. I'll treasure it forever.
Evan, when did the light bulb go off that I could make this a career?
Another great question. We were just so blessed, as the bands went on, you kind of learn new things. And every now and then a band comes to town and you see them doing something different, whether it's selling a different type of merch or flipping their guitar upside down. So you kind of apply these things. And as you start to do that stuff, maybe you start to pick up a fan base. And I think the first band that we were in started to pick up a fan base. And there was a really small label at the time called Eyeball Records, which hadn't yet, but was about to sign Thursday and My Chemical Romance. And, we were all just playing in these bands as teenagers, basically. And there were a few individuals that helped us get to the next place. A friend of ours was a promoter, really good guy, and he would put us on shows, and he was kind of our de facto manager at the time. Like I said, another friend of ours was putting out records, which was crazy. So it was so pre like streaming and all that kind of stuff. So to be a record label was a real thing. And, he wanted to sign us, and our best friends were in another band. Our band was called Random Task. Their band was called Outline. And we would just tour together. And it was a really cool thing. But you kind of saw the path to getting to the next level. For us, that was older friends of ours who were in bands that were signed, that were then starting to tour and pick up fan bases and make music videos and play in stores at record stores. So you'd kind of see the path to get up the mountain, and you'd follow the steps.
How do you think the path has changed now that it's all digital streaming and people aren't necessarily selling CDs and records?
Great question. Also, I think what's interesting is as we get to this place where we're not collecting DVDs and we're not, filling our houses with all this unnecessary stuff, there's almost an underground of collecting. And I think you see it in every age group. You see little kids collecting Labubus, but with music fans, you see them collecting vinyl. So I think there still is a place for vinyl and collectibles like that. But I think streaming is an amazing tool for discovery. I think when it first came out, as representatives, we looked at it as, wow, we really have to lean into this because it can be a great discovery tool, like I said, to getting some of our, young and developing artists to the next stage. Now it's a great place to cultivate an audience. And I think it really rewards artists that put out a lot of music. So you see artists like Zach Bryan putting out song after song after song and kind of not following the guidelines of what our partners sometimes say, this is what you should do. But I think it's a great way to make fans
Interesting.
nowadays.
Apollo Celine's got your summer playlist covered. Check out their new bangers, Out Till Morning and Search for the Light, available on all streaming platforms. Released June 20th, 2025, these tracks are pure energy, perfect for late night drives or beachside vibes. Don't miss the songs defining summer 2025.
Evan, as someone that's been in this music industry for really nearly 3 decades,
It's crazy.
you've really seen in the history of the music industry, it hasn't evolved as much as it has, let's say since 2000. With that, where do you see, I mean, when you began in the early 2000s to now, what are some key differences and characteristics that you look for in artists that you maybe wouldn't have back in 2000, 2003, 2008?
Another really good question. I think at the end of the day, the stuff that I want to work is stuff that I would want to listen to. And that's one thing. And, all of us, all 4 of us on this call, I'm sure our taste has a range of this and this. There's not one genre that I want to work in. I like a lot of different types of music. It piques my interest in folk. It piques my interest in dance, in rock, in pop, whatever it is. So the artists that I work with, I'm really blessed that I really enjoy their music. And it's a passion of mine to help them grow their audience. But I think at the end of the day, the through line through all of those decades of artists, the early 2000s, the teens, now, is I think you really have to be ambitious and really want to succeed to continue. And I think perseverance is ultimately a really important thing. But, having a vision for who you want to be as an artist and always using that as your North Star is going to be a really important thing along the way.
Well, with that said, during the peak of your steel train days, what did that mountaintop
It
look
was
like for you?
so different than it is for artists now because stuff like streaming didn't exist. Steel Train existed from 2002 to kind of 2012, maybe. That's kind of when it ended. And, maybe streaming just came in at the end of that, but it certainly wasn't something we focused on. It was a time of kind of the people that helped you give you these watershed moments were gatekeepers. And those gatekeepers were festival promoters, late night bookers, radio station programmers. This sounds crazy, but people that run the programs at Target so that you could get the end caps at those stores, different things like that along the way. And again, we were really ambitious and we were really curious. And I would actually add, I think curiosity is such an important thing for an artist because I think what it is going to do is going to allow you to every day you're going to be fascinated by something and hopefully you're able to apply that to your journey and figure out a way to achieve whatever it is you're curious about that day, whether it happens in a month, a year, whatever it is. Our curiosity was very real and it was something that, you know, continued to grow throughout our days. So when the band really started, like early 2000s, early 2002, whatever it was, we wanted to be in magazines and we wanted to be on tour and we wanted to be playing festivals. And we were lucky and blessed that we ended up achieving all those things, but it certainly wasn't achieved right away. And I think that's one thing that we had going for us, in that we were patient, but we didn't just sit on our butts. We worked for everything that we ended up getting.
Yeah.
But it all came and it came with time.
And Evan, what was the transition where you said, "I think I'm done being a musician and I want to
We
start
had achieved a
managing"?
lot and we had so much fun doing it. Jack was in another band called Fun, which was obviously a huge act. I was lucky enough to get to fill in for Nate and play bass with them and have fun with them, towards the end of Steel Train. But I think I always knew I didn't want to be a 70-year-old guy in a backstage room. And I was really, really fortunate to have a couple friends that we grew up with, Josh Levine and then his partner, Brandon Creed, who were managing a really young Bruno Mars at the time. And I think Bruno had a big song like with Grenade and Just the Way You Are, but he certainly wasn't the Bruno that we know nowadays. And, they wanted to build the
Yep.
company and they gave me an opportunity to be a manager. On a separate path, I had friends that we had toured with. They were always a really cool band, and they were starting a new band. And they kind of approached me and they said, "Hey, we want you to play bass in this new band." And I said to them, "It's really interesting because I'm at this fork in the road. I don't think I want to play bass in your band, but I can tell you why I think I'd be a great manager for you." And they gave me that opportunity to manage them, which I'll forever be grateful for. But it was an incredible learning experience for both of us because I was very ambitious and eager to really succeed as a young manager. And I applied a lot of the relationships that I had from my touring days, the decade plus of touring, to managing them. And early on, we got such great looks because of those relationships, but also because the band was great and the music they were making was great. And, early on, we got them on Conan, which was a huge thing, which helped get them signed to RCA Records early on with the A&M Octone guys. And,
Nice.
Jack, my old partner in the band, was great and gave them some dates with Fun. And, it was really one of those cool things where I was able to tap into the worlds that I had come from to help pave the path for the world that I was going into. And then, just through mining
Very cool.
relationships, you find other acts that you're really excited about. You get them signed to labels and you begin their journey. And suddenly you've got this roster of like developing artists that you're really excited about that are growing and growing. And then suddenly you pick up an artist that's kind of having a moment like Atlas Genius, and then a big DJ like Nicky Romero. And then through the years, you just keep getting bigger and different artists. And it's a really unique the path that you start on. You obviously have an idea of where you want to be, but sometimes the place that you end up getting to is makes you so much happier and different than what you had originally envisioned.
Hmm. Well, prior to selling yourself in that moment and becoming the manager, did you have business or entrepreneurial experience? Was that the first moment that you kind of said, huh, like I'm making that pivot from musician to businessman?
Huh. Well, first, I hate the word businessman only because I think with
Uh,
creating stuff, the business side of it has a negative connotation. What I actually don't even have a better phrase, but when I hear that word, those two industries, like art and business, don't always go like this in a beautiful way because they're at odds at some points.
I would agree.
I love helping artists achieve things and reach new places and setting a path and climbing that mountain with them. Um, so I would almost use the phrase like Sherpa or something that it implies helping them reach a new
Got it.
level. But I don't say that a lot. I'm just thinking right now and we're spitballing here. Um,
Yeah,
I also forgot the
absolutely.
question because I went on that tangent.
Well, I'll repeat it. So when you were that um, young, hungry, ambitious man looking to become a manager, I used the word businessman, but
Yeah.
I'll use the word entrepreneur, or let's just use selling yourself, right? Had prior to that, did you have sales experience in any capacity, or was that your first time really going in on the entrepreneurial
It was definitely the
managerial
first
world
time.
slash
There's an
role?
inciting incident in my teenage years that I look at as a really important thing that kind of helped on this path, but also created a parallel path. When we were playing in bands when we were young, we didn't have means of like getting new instruments and stuff like that. It was expensive and we didn't really have money. My first kind of real job was caddying at a golf course. And I took that job right next to our guitar player Daniel's house because I wanted to buy a Mesa Boogie amplifier and it cost 800 bucks. And I was like, I'm going to work half the summer at this golf course. I'll buy the amp and then I'll stop doing it. And I didn't really know anything about golf. What it did was a couple things. It allowed me to buy that amp. It also taught me how to interact with older people. And I think as a 16-year-old, you're kind of
Mhm.
surrounded by your friends and you don't really want to hang out with their parents. But you're kind of forced to represent yourself in a great way so that the person you're golfing with and, kind of advising on what club they should take sees you as knowledgeable in this area. And it taught me a great deal about bridging an age gap. Some of my relationships now that are dearest to me are with people 20 years my senior. I'm just going to talk about this for 30 seconds,
Mm.
but a very, very close friend of mine passed away this weekend, and he was 40 years older than me. He literally was 40 years older than me. One of the most unique friendships of my life. How rare is it for a 35-year-old to be friends with a 75-year-old? It's very, very rare, unless you're related to them, And this was a relationship that was brought to me through golf. And I learned so much through this relationship, but that only happens because of me caddying and learning how to kind of make friends with other people that are twice your age. Thanks.
Sorry for your loss,
Yeah,
Thank
Evan.
you,
sorry
guys.
about that.
Evan, this friend of yours who was many years older than you, what's some of the advice some of the wisdom that he gave down to you? Because I feel like that's one of the beautiful things about having friends who have more experience than you have, because you're able to learn from their experiences, hear stories that people are your own age wouldn't have.
I'll tell you what he gave to me, but I'll start with the kind of person that he was. He was the funniest person I ever met. And he was Robin Williams' manager and Billy Crystal's manager. And I think Billy Crystal just wrote an obituary today where he basically said that. He was the funniest person in the room always. And I don't even think he meant to be. It's just who he was. He was very candid and he spoke the truth of what he said, but he lived to kind of make other people smile, which was really, really cool. And I think what I learned from him, a lot of it was about management. And he helped me through some situations, through the years of going from one company to another, dealing with artists and what they're going through at different points in time. But he was a really great human being.
Beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
at this point in your professional career, you've do have the experience. Do you have people that lean onto you as a mentor, and how do you handle that role as a mentor?
I really enjoy it. I think when we came together and started the music division, we had all come from other companies. I was at a company called Full Stop. One of my partners was at a company called C3. Another partner was at a company called SB Projects. Another company partner was at Monotone and Rock Nation and all these different places. And, some people were on their own. And we all kind of came together at those companies. There were older and bigger figures, you would say, who have had years of experience, and you learn from having relationships with them, and you learn from things like that how you're going to treat the people around you. And I think the culture that we've built is one of a kind, but very, very special, because what we try to do is instill opportunity for a lot of the younger staff and partners and managers that work in the division, and also make sure that they always know there's a line of communication to us. We all have direct teams, and the people that I talk to, we talk every morning at 9:15 a.m. and we go over what we're going through that day. But outside of work, we also have our individual relationships with each other. And it's been really beautiful to see, a lot of the day-to-day managers that I work with start as much younger managers, not having as much experience or coming from agencies to management, now having very successful artists that they represent on the day-to-day side, as well as very successful artists that they represent as young managers now. So that gives me a lot of pride.
Love that. Evan, my brothers and I, we have a musical group called Apollo Celine where we play together and make music. And we're at the very beginning stages of producing and creating music. What's some advice that you would give to this generation of musicians, seeing how the music has evolved from when you started to where you are now?
The best advice I could give is kind of like a four-piecer, and it's really quick. Put out great songs, continue to put out great songs. Don't be too precious, because if you wait too long, you're going to grow bored of the song. You're going to have a new song you're more fond of. And at the end of the day, every song you write it's going to have its audience, whether it's a huge audience or a small audience. And then on top of that, just keep going. Don't stop. Try not to be a Monday morning quarterback and be like, what do we do wrong here? Let's assess this and that. Learn from what you did and apply it to the next thing, but just keep moving forward.
One of my things about music versus podcasting is I feel with the podcast, when we first began, obviously it wasn't great. We just kind of kept trucking along. It turned into guests, and that kind of what the show evolved into. But I feel with music, like podcast, it's more quantity focused. You got to put out volume, whereas music is way more quality focused. So if our first 10 podcasts were shit, whatever, the next 10 were better. But if your first 10 songs are shit, that's more of a problem.
It's
Quality
hard
in
to
those two
say
fields.
because it's hard to say in this day and age what shit is, because what shit to me is not shit to a 13-year-old who's looking at TikTok that's going to help make that go viral. Maybe. I don't know. But also, I would say you learn from everything you do. The best I just had this conversation recently with someone. The best songs that I love, I don't really care about the recording of them. I care much more about the song. Maybe there's something that stands out every now and then, but like the song is the song. And what I see a lot of the time is it's easy to just create and create and create. When you're an artist and you put something out, it's a little scary because you get judged on it, but you're always going to be judged and you're never going to be fully happy with something. There's always another mix you could do, another master, another note, whatever it is. I would just say, it doesn't mean put out bad stuff. It means put out stuff that you're excited about and then just go to the next, and learn from experiences, but just keep moving forward.
I love that. Evan, since transitioning from a musician to a manager, have you ever found yourself going back to being a musician and creating and writing and recording music
Hadn't
and even releasing it?
I don't have plans to release any music, but the band that I was in recently, Jack does a kind of a benefit show every year. That's what it is. And we got to reunite at it and play a couple songs, which was fun. And I got to play a song with Trey Anastasio, who was always like a hero of mine when I was a kid.
Oh,
Um, and then, over the last few years, I was with someone for a bit that was an artist, and I was like really excited about music again and like real music. So I'm lucky. I have a fun guitar collection that I love. I unfortunately lost a lot of guitars in January in the fires, but I ended up getting some new ones, and I love just sitting around, fooling around with the guitar.
absolutely. I'm sorry that you lost guitars in the fire. That's horrible. There's
Yeah,
nothing
very
worse than
true.
losing
Especially
things
when
you
they were
love.
gifts or really old, precious, you know, guitars that great songs were written on, but there'll be new songs written on new guitars.
Beautiful perspective. Now, Evan, I want to talk a little bit about, we keep talking about all the great things in the music industry. What are some things that you dislike and some things you think you would like changed?
That's a hard question to answer. Um, I see all sides of it. We see record labels, we see publishers, we see booking agents, we see artists, we see all sides of it. Lawyers, business managers. One thing I genuinely see, people want everyone to win. I don't see a lot of people rooting against each other.
Interesting.
I think because we're putting out such a high volume of music, I think a lot of the time e- e- people that you work with can say, oh man, this didn't go like we planned. They didn't support us on this one. This didn't happen on that one. I think that's always going to happen. I can't think of a perfect scenario that ever existed in
Yeah.
anything, in sports, in art, in music, in, I'm sure, finance as well, which I don't know as well, but there's never a perfect scenario. And it's kind of like you have to make do with what you have. There's certainly going to be instances where bigger opportunities are afforded for the highest artists, and smaller artists have a harder time reaching those opportunities. But I think if you dig and dig and dig, you're going to find a way to get to the other side of that door, whether it's through the ground, through the left, through the right, through the top, or just breaking the door down completely. So I'm trying to think of an area that I would
Mm.
change if I could. I think it's all about discovery. Whatever type of artist you are, if you're a 15-year-old kid making punk music in your room, if you're a 25-year-old woman making pop music in your dorm room of business school or what, I don't know, I said 25. I'm trying to think. There's always going to be an audience for you. You just have to find it. So it's like, how hard are you willing to work to find it? And more importantly, how hard are your representatives willing to work to find it? And I think that's one thing that I really pride myself on. I don't want to pick up 20, 30, 40 artists because I won't be able to do the best job for all of them. I I love the people I work with. I have a
Oh,
really
absolutely.
curated roster, and I know, and I think my clients know, I'm going to give 100% to them. And if you end up having too many clients, you just can't fulfill that obligation. So I think the advice I would give to artists out there, find people that are going to represent you to the best of their capabilities.
Evan, I see it behind you. You got some Grammy Awards there, gold record. As someone who has had success, what is your definition of success?
I honestly believe my definition of success is, I think people's definition of success, the end goal is happiness. So that's what it should be. I don't think success is a Grammy or a number one
Yes.
song or a tour that sells out in 3 seconds. All of those things get you to happiness in your mind. I think people that want to achieve those things, it's good to have goals, but if your goal is achieving that and that doesn't make you happy, there's an issue there. Because at some point in time, you said to yourself, if I only had this, I would be happy, you know? And I think all along the way, it's good to remind yourself of what makes you happy and why you do the things you do. I enjoy bringing great deals together. I enjoy helping artists achieve what they want. But more importantly, those things give me the ability to do great things in my life, whether it's travel, play golf with friends, um, spend time with my girlfriend at great restaurants. Like those are things I enjoy. And I'm able to do those things because I
Mm.
work hard and I help people achieve what they want.
Well, that's excellent perspective. And given your years of experience, when you were in your 20s, and like you said earlier, you finally got the festival gig, and from the point it was booked, I'm sure there was a huge sense of accomplishment to the time that you perform, your huge rush with that day. But then the next day comes and it's like, all right, now what?
That's a fantastic question. And I think it is a very common feeling. I've heard actors who have won Oscars talk about the day after, because you spent your whole life waiting to achieve this, thinking that was going to make you happy, whatever it was, whatever that goal in mind you had was. And a lot of the time you're like, wait a sec, I'm not this. And I thought this would make me happy. So I think what I really like to do is talk about what are our next goals. We always have like a set of North Stars. And, with different clients, we do some summits, we do retreats each year talking about, hey, next year we're going to do this. And next year we're going to do that. And it's good for your whole team to kind of have a sense of what do we want to accomplish this year? And what do we want to set our sights on that's long term for next year?
Yeah, that's really good. And even at this point, we're 3 years into our show, and there are some guests that we've had on that we've been pursuing for almost 2 years, and we finally got some of them these past couple months, and it was really exciting to get them. But then, like, you finish recording, and it's like, like that was like what you wanted the last 18 months, and you got it. Like now, what? Like as awesome as it may be, like on paper, like the ceiling grew higher, and that now it's kind of continue to look upward. So it is a weird feeling. I think in my opinion, you could probably attest to this. That is probably a indication of something going in the right
Thousand
direction. In
percent.
your
And that's a
experience, is
great
that
way to put
accurate?
it. And it's important to have perspective and kind of remind yourself of that if we're on the right track. We just need to keep going because what we're doing works. And the fact that we've accomplished these goals and we already have new ones, and it's, to be honest, that's the definition of success. Because your next set of goals is always going to change.
Yeah.
If you accomplish the first set, amazing, you did it. And now you're on to the next set. You should be so proud of what you've done. I think there's a common thing in any industry where you're achieving something at a high level, which is it's very easy to get in this place of, oh man, I just wish we had that. Because what ends up happening is a year later you have that, but you're already on to the I just wish I had that of the next thing. And no one wants to live in that hamster wheel. It's like if we're all able to wake up every day, or when we're in our funky moments, just be like, whoa, we've accomplished so much. You feel good about yourself, and it gives you the ability to kind of be like, all right, it doesn't matter if I don't have 10 Grammys or whatever it is. It's just, it's hard. Reminding yourself of that is like a skill in itself.
Yeah, totally agree.
Something I read recently or saw somewhere, which really kind of reminded me of what you said, is that a bad day for you is someone
Totally.
else's perfect dream day. Just all about
Totally.
perspective, you
Dude,
know?
that's the truest statement. I mean, it's, anything you do, you go to a baseball game, there are some kids in their lives that might never go to a baseball game, whatever it is. And I'm so fortunate because so much of what I'm able to do is that kind of stuff. And I feel really blessed to be a part of it. But a lot of the time you're there working, but to remind yourself that you're here and you wanted to be here, and some people might never, that's the coolest thing. And I'm also trying to help those other people achieve
Well,
those
and
things. There was an amazing book that a partner of mine gave me 4 years ago called The Second Mountain by David Brooks. And I talk about this book a lot with clients, with friends, with relatives, with people going and dealing with situations. And it talks about the subject that we've kind of just been discussing, which is a lot of people in their lives, they have this first mountain and they think when they're standing at the top of it, they're going to be happy. And for some people, it's winning an Oscar. For others, it's winning a Grammy. For others, it's achieving great success in finance or sports or, medical school or whatever it is. And most people, when they reach that point, they realize that didn't make them happy and they go through a valley. And what this author, David Brooks, talks about is the second mountain, which is kind of real happiness, which is giving and selflessness and finding something you do for others, because that is true happiness. I was lucky enough to find that a year and a quarter ago, and it kind of found me because it was something, there was an incident in my life that happened to me, which was really unfortunate. During the pandemic, I got a dog who was a very, very special dog. Actually, I have a picture of him right here. His name was Henry. It's a very, very, very sweet dog. And, he brought me so much joy. And last summer, right, or, just about 13 months ago, I had to go with a client who was playing Hyde Park to London. And I'm there with the client. And while I was away, I gave my dog to a trainer. And unfortunately, the dog had a heat stroke and passed away. The trainer could have saved the
Oh,
dog. He brought the dog to the vet, but the vet said surgery would be X amount of money and the trainer needed to make the decision right away. Trainer didn't even have enough on his credit card to do it. And he didn't even call me, which is a whole other thing. But what ends up happening is I find out my dog passed away. It was really, really hard for me. And through this dark moment, I realized there's a way to find the light in this and a way for his death to not be in vain. And what I did was I saw this. There's a very real world where a lot of people that care about their animals can't afford to help them. So we started a foundation called the Henry Foundation, named after Henry. And what we do is we raise money for people who can't afford veterinary care. And I'm very proud to say that in the first year of this, we saved 52 dogs, which is a dog for every week. And our goal for this year
beautiful.
is to save 2 dogs every week, 104 dogs. So we have our work cut out for us. But if there's anyone watching this that wants to be a part of my second mountain and play a role in making so many individuals happy, you can donate at the Henry Foundation for Dogcare.org. It's all tax deductible, so you can write it off your taxes at the end of the year. But it makes people really happy because these are people who might not make a lot of money, or dog surgeries are very expensive, and if you've got a pet, they're a part of your family. To be in that position and not be able to help them is really hard for people. So I'm very blessed that I've gotten to create this thing out of this dark moment, and that is my second mountain.
On the hunt for legendary wings, Buffalo's in Bloomington, Indiana, and Carmel, Indiana has you covered. Crowned top 10 wings in the nation by USA Today, our wings are a fan favorite. Dip into Mrs. Louie's famous sweet Q sauce for that sweet and tangy kick. Visit Buffalo's and wing it like a pro.
Beautiful. Well, Evan, we'll be making a donation on behalf of Everything But Politics, as well
Thank
as
you.
putting the link in the description.
Thank you, guys.
So thank you for sharing that story.
Well, Evan, they say that light shines brightest in the darkness. So that's a beautiful thing you guys got from that dark moment.
Have you guys ever had a moment like that where something happened to you and you didn't understand the reasoning, but you were able to turn it into something else?
I think for me, back in 2022, shortly after I'd graduated, I didn't get a job that I craved at the moment, and at the time, I was definitely hurt. But that me not getting that job led to the creation of this show and getting the opportunity to talk to men like you, men and women like you. So completely changed my life and the relationships I have for the better. And it's one of those mysterious, one of those God works in mysterious ways situations. Because if I would have gotten that job, I live in Florida now, but I'd be in Chicago. My life would be entirely different. Entirely different. So it's just weird reflecting on things. There are moments like, if I would have went to that college instead of the one I went to, like things like that, like my entire circle, all the relationships in my life would be so different. And it's crazy because you make a decision like that at 17, 18 years old, and it has such a profound effect
So
on
true.
your life and what's to come.
I could think of one. It's not sad like the dog, but it's just more just like a life change, of course. When I was going into high school, I was super serious with golf.
What?
I knew I wanted to play college golf.
Yeah.
That was the mountain, right? Going into freshman year of high school. So I grinded, played so much golf, blisters all over my hands, and made varsity my freshman year. And as the season progressed, I found myself at odds with the coach. Him and I just didn't like him. He turned me off to golf. And by the end of the year, I had built up almost a hatred towards him. I was like, I'm done golfing. He ruined golf for me. But I love golf now. I play all the time now. But he ruined golf for me that year. And because he ruined golf for me, I made a pivot and I learned how to play the guitar. And now I've been playing the guitar for 10 years now. And if it wasn't for that pivot of that instance where I thought I'm going to be a college golfer, maybe play pro, and then he turned me off of golf and made me pick up the guitar, and it instilled a love
That's
for
a
music,
perfect
which
example
totally
also,
changed the
because
course of my
some
life.
people would view that coach as being like, oh, what a bad guy. I can't believe he was in my life. He actually ended up turning you on to something that brings you so much joy, maybe more joy than golf, like that's so cool. What about you, Evan?
Definitely.
Yeah, mine is more of like an internal thought process that isn't a specific moment. So Ethan and I went to Indiana University, and that was the time we recorded our 9 songs that we are currently releasing now, with 2 of them we've released and 1 coming out Friday and then every other week. And the initial thought process for, I guess, this podcast and music was just like, you wanted, I guess, me personally, wanted everything to happen just so rapidly and quickly. And I've grown to really just enjoy the process. And whenever the world hears our music and we grow an audience, with that music, whenever it may be, that's when it's gonna happen, that I no longer have the rapid anticipation of, oh, like, constantly maybe checking the streams or just enjoying the process of, and same with this podcast. Like Merrick said, there'd be the joy of, oh, we're gonna get to talk to Joe Pompliano or talk to Joe
Yeah.
Flacco or whoever it was. Compared to now, I'm really excited to learn about who we're not, prior to the looking into the guest ahead of time. I really enjoy just having that deep connection with our guest and learning something about them and taking it away. I feel like now we do a podcast every Monday that I am constantly reminded of things throughout these podcasts that I'll mention America Ethan that
So
has
true.
made me a better person or made us better people just by the
That's
knowledge
huge.
someone
That's so
gives me
cool.
like you've given us today. It's
Well,
been a
and
lot
Evan,
of fun.
another thing you don't even realize, like we're 40 something minutes in. When I go back and re-listen, there will be points that I pick up that I won't maybe I didn't realize in a moment, but like points that will stick with me that the twins and I will mention again. And going back to all four of our situations, it kind of reminds me, I don't know if you've read Meditations, but it's like what's meant to be will be, and things happen for you, not to you.
I mean, look, anytime something goes wrong, your first instinct isn't, it's all going to be okay. Your first instinct is, oh my God, like what's different? But if you're able to take that philosophy, which is beautiful, things happen for you, not to you, you're going to find joy in everything. Something bad happening, you'll find a reason why it's okay. Something good happening, it's good. And it's like, we're not on this earth to go to sleep upset because we didn't accomplish something. Like life is an adventure and a journey, and there's so many different parts of it. And if you're able to, experience the bad as much as you experience the good and realize that it's going to help you in some way, that's beautiful.
And another thing that I have been conscious of getting better at is, say we record a great conversation like this, right? And we know like we just did a great hour, going to publish it Monday. There'd be times I get way too high, like way too fired up, pumped up, excited, which isn't bad. But on the contrary, if an episode didn't go as great as I had thought or hoped, I wouldn't be like, I'd just be like,
Yeah.
like I anticipated that being different. So staying level.
I love that. And I also think it's a good way to put it, staying level. If you're able to realize a great episode and a bad episode, neither are going to ruin your career or make your career. That's it. If you're able to take those away from it and just treat them as what they are, that's it.
Well, and speaking of, because you're a golfer, you could relate to this with us. Like staying level is the most important thing when you're golfing.
It's such a great point. I was playing this weekend with a guy named Chris Hetherington, great golfer, and he was a big football player, really good guy. And this guy hits the ball a mile, you know what I mean? And he's like a +2 probably. And I saw him have, a bad hole. Like we're on par 5 and he, tries to drive the green, hits it in the bunker, has a bad lie, can't get out of the bunker, whatever, 2 or 3 putts it. The next hole he birdies. And it's like some golfers take that double and they're like, oh, my round's over. I'm guilty of that because we're all trying to
It's ruined.
achieve perfection or whatever that is when we're out there and like put together this round in our mind that's a masterpiece that we look back on and we're like, remember when? And that's a beautiful thing. Like every time I step out there, we're going for that. My best rounds have started as my worst. Golf is just one of the amazing doors that opened for me at that age when I was younger, and it's an adventure of its own because there's so many great courses you're able to play and no other sport has that. You can't go play basketball pickup game at MSG next week, but you could play Pebble Beach or St. Andrews or whatever it is. And because I've gotten to travel for work so much, I've been able to bookend trips for myself to some amazing special courses. And I wouldn't take anything back in terms of how I played them. But I think certainly for the future, when you're playing a course like Port Rush or Sunningdale or Royal County Down, which I'm going to be playing in a few weeks, you want to put up a great score, and you
That's so
want to be
cool.
like, I shot 73 at Royal County Down, or something that's within reach. But if you have a bad hold, 4 holes in, 5 holes in, it's so easy to just be like, oh, that's it, it's over, and it's such a great analogy. There's so many good metaphors with golf. I love using them because I think a great analogy allows you to understand something, and people throughout my life have given me those phrases, and you go, whoa, I get it, and every year there's a new one, and I enjoy using them here and there, and then sometimes using them too much. But you know, the one that you had just talked about, Evan, in golf, which is if you hit a bad shot, move on. Your next shot, if your next shot is influenced in a bad way by your last shot, that shot is going to be tainted. And that's the same thing with music. It's like, put out what you're happy with and then move on. Put out what you're happy with and then move on. And it's okay if, the last one didn't do this. You don't delay the next one because this one did this. And that's something I see.
Well, in something I tell Ethan writes the songs for our group, and something I always tell him when we were working on these 9 songs is, doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Let's not
That's
release
good.
these songs until you're satisfied with them. Once you're satisfied with them, then whatever happens, happens. I like that Rick Rubin approach that he talks about.
I love that. Also, Ethan, I would say in terms of the barometer of what you're satisfied with, make sure you're not overanalyzing and putting a microscope up to a microscope up to a microscope. Like sometimes we listen to mixes and we listen to finished versions, and then we listen to demos, and I'm like, the average listener in their car or iPod or AirPods or whatever it is, they're not going to be able to hear these small things. And those things might bother you, but at the end of the day, just keep releasing stuff. You're going to make new fans, and you're going to see yourself making new fans, and it's going to give you the positivity you need to like continue to get to the next stage.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice, because I've always been the guy.
Yeah.
Everyone's their own hardest critique, for better or for worse. But I kind of enjoy it because I know how to do it, not where I don't go over the edge, where I can like be working on something in Logic Pro, and like I can get super detailed with it, and I know no one else is going to be looking into this detail, but I really enjoy the process of like fine tuning and making the little Easter eggs just for me, where like I added like a little lick here, but it's really back in the mix, and it's like the little things that like people won't notice, but like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I want to make things that are my favorite.
I love that. As
You
long
want
as
to
you're
make
not
you want to
spending
make
a
your own
decade
favorite
making
song.
like an
So
album
like,
like Prince or
yeah,
someone,
no, we got you got to be efficient.
I always talk about this. Radiohead followed OK Computer with Kid A, and they didn't take 5 years, 10 years in between. You know what I mean? Like, this day and age is different than back then. That's one of the differences, Merrick. When you talk about 2005 or 2000 to 2020 or 2025, it's hard to go away because there's so many new artists putting out music. So for an artist to really put out an album and then tour on it and then not put out an album for another 5 years, it's difficult because music changes in that time. So there's kind of a demand for artists to be continuously putting out music. I think if you don't look at it like a demand, and you're able to look at your songs as things you were proud of in that moment, I think that's going to be the best thing. Because there's no way you can make something now that your 75-year-old version of yourself is going to be like, I'm totally proud of that. You're always going to be able to judge it from the past.
Another thing that's pretty interesting with the music industry today, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the platforms and the algorithms, they reward consistency. That if you put out a song every month, that's to your benefit, not to your disadvantage.
And you're totally right. And I think part of that is a byproduct of putting out a lot of songs, which is, if you're just looking at Spotify as an example, if you put out a song and then another song and then another song, you're going to reach more people, and your monthly listeners go up. And then as your monthly listeners go up, you start to reach new tiers of discovery, of playlisting. You also reach new tools like radio that Spotify has, which reaches more fans of other artists, and you get put in Ed Sheeran's radio if you're making kind of like quirky pop, that kind of stuff. or you reach Drake radio if you're making, or Kendrick Lamar radio if you're making, hip hop and that kind of stuff. But if you keep putting out stuff, you're going to be making more fans. And as you make more fans, it rewards that. It wants you to reach more people.
No, I'm happy you mentioned radio. A question that I have not been able to find the answer to is, how do you get your song played on Sirius XM?
Think if you have a record label, it's easier because those people certainly have relationships with the people that kind of run each format there, and each station. But I also think, I'm sure they take notice of unsigned artists. So I'm sure they have programs. I can think of a couple that are kind of on the indier side there. But I think nowadays with social media, there's always a way to reach people. And by the way, if a song is working, all
The
of these
outreach.
platforms, radio, streaming, whatever it is, they're all going to take notice of it.
Now, when you're in the car, let's say you're driving to work, what are you listening to? What currently has you inspired?
Songs that clients of mine are working on, different versions of those. A lot of podcasts. I really enjoy those. Sometimes books on tape. And then other times artists that I just genuinely enjoy that I don't work with. Gregory Alan Isakov, a lot of different artists.
Well, and Evan, another thing I want to cover with you, because it's always nice to talk to people that create, because there's a different perspective. You paint quite frequently. What has that process been like for you, both therapeutically and just through it as a creative outlet?
It is a gift that I never knew I would have. I mean, I always did artsy stuff when I was younger, and I would sketch and do stuff like that. But as you said, the conduit for that for me was really music in my teens and 20s. And then in my 30s, I was, just working really hard and focusing on helping my clients achieve the next level. And then in my late 30s, I was, with someone who was really creative and I guess brought out that side of me, and I just threw myself into it. And after work, I would just paint for hours, and I love painting and giving my friends gifts. And I've done a lot of the stuff I do is abstract, but a lot of it, sometimes I'll just paint a friend's dog and I'll give them a painting, and they really enjoy that. Or a friend's dog passes away, or I make a portrait of my friend's family. I did unfortunately lose hundreds of paintings in this Malibu fire, but ironically, I was going back home that day to bring 3 of the bigger ones to my other house. I'm very, very fortunate that I have another place. And I chose not to go, and I regret it, but it's almost like those paintings were meant to go, because I tried to recreate one of them and I was like, that's not going to work.
Evan, a lot of this conversation has gone back to, in my opinion, defining success and the mountaintop kind of always extending. So I want to conclude this podcast by you sharing where the next mountaintop is. Where do you want to be in the next year, half a decade, or even decade?
Success for me over the next decade is a family. You know what I mean? And it's not tied to making $5 million or whatever it is, or having 5 Grammys or whatever. It's truly, we all have things in our lives that we want to do, and it would be great if those things got crossed off. But I think ultimately the truest form of success for me will be having a family that is, because that's something you work on, a lot, even more so than your clients. That's the biggest and truest probably form of what could be happiness. And I hope that brings me a ton of happiness.
Well, what's beautiful too is conversations like these that are recorded and will live on these platforms forever. Like, it would be so cool if in the late 90s, early 2000s, hearing my dad have this conversation before I was born. So for one day, for your kids to be able to listen to this
I
is
hope
really
they do.
a
And
divine
if you're
moment
watching,
in many
go to
ways.
bed, Jimmy.
Amazing.
Very
Well,
good.
Evan, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and
I
learning
really
more
enjoyed
about
it.
you
Thank
and
you,
your
guys.
incredible life.
Thanks,
So
Evan.
thanks for taking the
Mark.
time.
Thanks.
A lot of fun. Thanks,
It's been our
man.
pleasure. And Evan, where can anyone that wants to keep up with you range? What's the best way to follow along?
If you're still watching or listening right now, donate to the Henry Foundation for dogcare.org. I think it's such a cool thing. I'm proud of all the things in my life, but I think that is a great way to help others, and I would advocate for that.
Mm.
Well said. Link
thank
in
you. Well,
bio will be
Yeah,
able.
yes,
will-
absolutely. And I'm proud of this episode. So thank you very much, Evan. And we will
Thank you guys.
absolutely do this again one day. So thank you.